Chris, this week we got Ideogram 2, and as a result of getting Ideogram 2 and the new release, we got to fulfill, I think, an incredible dream of creating a marketing image for a magazine for our famous horse eggs.
Isn't it amazing? I just love everything about it. I love the brown splotches. I love that the horse is breathing fire. And this is just one of many variations. I'm I'm a bit disappointed in this one because the fire doesn't come directly out of its nostrils, but overall this image is really beautiful.
Yeah, I know the majority of people listen, so I'll try and describe it. But imagine someone's cut out an ad from a magazine that says nutritional horse eggs, and there's a very nice horse on the image, some fire coming out of its mouth, but that's not that great. And then some giant eggs with brown spots on them. So yeah, it looks like someone's ripped it out of a magazine.
It looks incredibly realistic. It's amazing for
So
something that's so surreal.
yeah. So of course the big announcement was Ideogram 2. These are the guys that originally released a model Ideogram 1 that excelled at text in images when other models were really struggling with it. They also raised a bunch of money earlier in the year. I think about 80 million, a bunch. That actually sounds pretty small today
It's
compared
pocket
to.
change for Anthropic, but for regular humans, it's a lot of money.
Yes, they raised 80 million USD from Andreas and Horowitz. I think they led the round. They're a Canadian-based company, and it's created by a guy, Mohammed Norozi, and he was previously on a senior scientist at Google who worked on Imagen. So we have yet another company forming out of the Google team. It's basically just Google guys competing against Google guys in AI at this
It
point.
must really annoy the people who funded all the research and like did all the preparation work and then they just defect and go do their own.
Yeah, although it sounds like most of them just end up back at the mothership now anyway. But what I really like this quote from Andreas and Horowitz, one of the partners there. I think Martin Casado. He said they're innovating on an intuitive product that acts as a printer of imagination to millions of users. I think that's such a cool.
It is a good description in the sense that we always talk about why we do this podcast. And the thing for me has always been just that delight we feel on days like today where we get to try something new. Like it's one of those days where we spent so long mucking around with this thing. We've done the podcast way later than we intended just because we were having fun making horse egg images and other things that I'm sure you'll show in a minute. But I think you're right. It's like because it is your own imagination being articulated like that, it's just so delightful and so entertaining.
Yeah, I must admit, I haven't. I don't know why. I think because of ideogram's realism, there's something much more natural and real about the images in comparison to Flux. Flux got me excited, and still I think is an incredible model. But it got me excited because it was open source and really good at instruction following. And I also think comparable to Midjourney, or probably a bit better in a lot of cases from my experience using it as a pleb. But Ideogram, just out of nowhere, the following week drops, and it just takes it to a whole new level.
I mean, we were already excited about Flux, and I know just so many people who use Simtheory are constantly using Flux. It produces amazing images, but trying Ideogram this morning, just the skin on people just looks so real. The hair looks real. Like it almost looks like just edited photos that someone's just taken an existing photo and then gone and edited it, which I guess in a way it kind of is, but we just haven't seen anything like it in a model. And I kept trying to fault it, thinking, okay, well, I'm asking for a fairly standard image here, so it's probably just going to its, memories and just making something from that. But then I'd be like, add a dragon breathing fire in the background, or add like I just did one then. It's a lady standing at the bottom of a marble staircase with books and things like that. And then I was like, add a horse. She's holding a small, and there's literally a picture of her with her arm around the neck of a small horse holding it on the staircase. And the horse looks real. It really is that whole imagination come to life thing, but the images are just so credible. It's not like you don't immediately go, that's definitely AI.
Yeah, you sent me a cool prompt of this like water park with a girl standing at the bottom of the slide smiling, a dragon breathing fire in the background, and then this day in AI, like it's a poster for a summer movie coming out. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you studied it in like great detail, maybe look. It looks as real as anything to me.
And that's the
Scrolling
thing,
around it,
when you zoom in on the finer details
but
and
even the hands, everything
you
is
get right
perfect.
in there, and these are fairly high resolution images. You can zoom right in and the detail stays. Like it isn't one of these things where it's like, oh, I zoomed in on the fingers and that did it away. Don't get me wrong, sometimes it makes small mistakes. I've noticed if you have larger, like it's excellent at text, but if you have a lot of text, like we did one earlier, I'm not sure if you're going to show it, but it had like the nutritional values of the horse eggs and things like that. And when you got into like say the label of the nutritional values, it looked a bit, a bit dodgy, but really like overall the quality is just astonishing. It really is amazing. And we're not even like we've only been playing with it this morning. So I imagine with better prompts, you could get even better results. People who know what they're doing with it.
Yeah, I think the one that really impressed me most was the human egg images that we created. So
Yeah, I didn't bring it up because I was wondering if you were going to show that or not.
no, it's hilarious. It looked, you know what it reminds me of? It's one of those like, just like again, a cutout from a magazine of like some like female product, but it has a giant egg. It says human egg on it, and then it says lay healthier eggs with the all new TDIA multivitamin. The woman is also pregnant, which just makes it even creepier. And then it
And the egg is so much bigger than she.
yeah, and then then
It's a really healthy egg.
and then you've got a box of tablets that looks 100% real with TDIA, like this day in AI, on the tab.
And like you think about how many instructions that followed when I prompted it. So I said a woman in a yellow swimsuit, and a large egg that says human egg on it, text that says the all new this day in AI multivitamin, and then I said in the bottom corner a box of pills that says TDIA on it. It managed to follow all of those instructions perfectly, and you're only showing one of the images. It did five of them or
Yeah,
four of
I've got
them.
another one up on the screen now.
Yeah,
This
and
one's
like
pretty good
they
too.
generally look like something like Saatchi and Saatchi would produce for some high-end magazine. Like if you said that was a clipping out of a magazine, other than the ridiculous content, you might believe it.
This
There's
one,
the horse on
this
the
one
beach, the
kills
horse eggs
me.
on the
Yeah,
beach.
a horse eggs on a beach with like two models touching two giant horse eggs. Admittedly, the text is terrible, but man, it
And this is just
looks.
that's the thing, you can just keep trying over and over again till you get something you like. And they have so Ideogram has different categories as well. So like when you go into the options, there's aspect ratio. So like if you're using it for like a web banner, you can do that. If you're using it for different style photos and things like that, you can do that. And also then they have a style. So they have general, realistic, design, render 3D, and anime, all as different options that you can pick.
Yeah, the different styles too, from what I understand, are specialized models as well. So the first one is essentially automatically selecting based on the prompt, and then if you guide it with the realism or the design or the 3D, it's gonna really force it down a path. I thought what was most incredible too about it is, and I actually sent an email out to Simtheory users explaining what I thought it was really good at as well, which is it's not just text rendering, it really is a graphics designer. Like you can get it to do really interesting graphics design that I would say is comparable to a template that you might find in something like Canva. And just to demonstrate that, I'll bring up some examples on the screen. Like I've got this marketing image for a bottle of like spirits up on the screen right now, like maybe bourbon or tequila or something. And again, the text isn't perfect. You could probably step through that a fair bit. These are just some prompts I found. Also, like website mock-ups. It can just like fully mock up a nice website design. Yeah, like some of them are just incredible. I'll try and find a few more examples here.
While you find them, one of the other ones I tried, I saw an ad the other day for some AI startup that was like, an architectural style design, like see your living room, if it had like this furniture in it or this thing in it. And so I tried a few that had like different styles of staircases, and then I added like a water slide in the house and like a bookcase and all this different stuff. And it just it's incredible the detail, like marble flooring. You can change the color of the marble flooring. You can add in different elements, and it all works.
Yeah, it really is just super impressive. Like I just cut and paste a bunch of prompts that people were sharing around graphics. So this one is like meow or never, and it's like a super cat graphic for a t-shirt. Then there's a logo, like this one's like Alyssa, and it's like a cupcake brand. But I mean, I think this is the first model I've seen that, especially the text elements of the image and just the graphic design in general, could be used as elements in a project or just used verbatim in ads or on Facebook or social media, and no one would be able to tell. You would think a graphics designer's done it.
Exactly. And they're beautiful and they're creative and interesting. Yeah, it's just, I'm so excited to continue playing with it. It's amazing.
I also did a test just to compare the image models. So, like, this was one of the example prompts. It says a photo of a model floating through space. The model is wearing a metallic outfit, yada, yada. It goes on for quite a bit. But this is the example. And what I found interesting about the output here is the people with Ideogram look like they could be real people. And then you do the same in Flux, and we were joking about this. And it's like this attractive model in a tight-fitting spacesuit. Exact same prompt. And I think Flux just has this sort of bias towards like models or very attractive people. Like even if you don't say, exactly what it is, it seems to just create beautiful people. So you naturally are like, oh, Flux is such a great model. I think there's like this bias introduced by the fact that it's always creating good looking people.
Yeah, interesting. I definitely am still a fan of Flux. Like some of the images it produces are amazing. It just definitely doesn't have that striking realism that we're seeing in Ideogram straight up without much effort as well.
There's also a really interesting experiment you can do between the two models, which I did, which is the prompt is a woman holding up her hand. You can see great detail in her hand. Now, this is just a test instruction following or its ability to do hands, because obviously that's something image models have struggled with in the past. And so Ideogram gives me a realistic woman who's probably middle-aged holding up her fingers. Unfortunately, there's 6 fingers, so you've got an extra.
Yeah, and I just think about like what it could be trained on, that it just mistakenly and perfectly adds an extra finger. It's like, just of all things to get wrong, it's almost like it's deliberate.
Yeah, so that was pretty interesting. But then you go over to Flux, and
Wow.
again, it's an attractive woman. I don't know why. I mean, I just said a woman. It picked. And the hand holding up, it's perfect 5 fingers. The nails are a bit odd, like they're
I mean,
scary.
you say that, but I guess if it's trained on a lot of stock photography, then you don't generally have like really disgusting people in stock photography, do you? Like,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, maybe like more recency bias, like, like people have started doing less like, aggressively attractive people in stock photos. But yeah, I mean, like it's sort of, it speaks, I think, to the instruction following of Flux here, which I still think, using them both a fair bit now, Flux is far superior at instruction following for general instructions where you're not very good at operating image models. Whereas I think Ideogram, if you're already good at prompting models, you could probably get far better results. Now, if you do this same experiment in Flux, it can sometimes get it sort of right, but in Ideogram, like the text, especially like ink on hand, looks real. Like you would struggle to actually tell that it's not real. I did some examples. They're not my best. I can't actually find the ones that I had sort of iterated on. I don't know where I've put them, but this one in particular, I think the ink looks incredibly real. Like if I zoom in on the detail of the
Wow.
hand, it's pretty hard to tell.
I
Uh,
actually tried a similar thing,
except,
not with that intention, but I was doing like an image of the Star Trek Enterprise with like all uniforms with this day in AI t-shirts. And I noticed a few of the t-shirts had that sort of crinkly effect, where the fabric sort of folds over on itself. And the text perfectly warped around it on multiple shirts. It was just absolutely incredible the way it's able to handle text in whatever context you want to put it in.
yeah. I didn't really give my my result on this though. Again, we've got 6 fingers on the gamer girl's hand. That's how you can tell. I don't know if like this 6 finger thing's a built-in thing in ideograms so that they can verify, like, no one verifies falsely on Reddit. It did later produce, I think,
Wow, that
a
one's
better one.
incredible.
Yeah, this text though
I
is a
wonder if
little
you
bit
could get like
faker.
today's newspaper on there, like if you gave it if you gave it actual headlines, if you could get a realistically looking newspaper on there. Sometimes they ask for that in like a hostage photo or whatever.
Yeah, it seems to struggle a little bit with like a ton more graphics. I actually tried a newspaper clipping in the image to image stuff as well to try and see if I could make it a bit different, but it didn't seem to work. So yeah, look, I think it's a really interesting model. I think it is useful as a graphics design partner. We've added it on Simtheory. You can play around with it there. You can also play around with it on the Ideogram website. But I think it's so useful to use as part of your agents as a graphics designer and a companion. Like if you need graphics for anything, I think this is the model to probably use. I think Flux is still a lot more fun because it just doesn't have a lot of filtering on it, and you can go nuts with it. But to me, Ideogram has set the bar very high outside of hands.
Yeah, that's right. You just got to be really, really careful when you get those close up on the hands.
So, like what I find interesting about the whole image model stuff is every week we seem to get a new model. I've also heard Imagen 3, I haven't played around with it enough yet, by Google, is also really good as well. And I think we're starting to see new tools be introduced where you can do things like, select the hair and say, change the hair to blue, replace this element. And in the past, those skills or those changes to images weren't working so great, but it does seem like, at least in some of these hosted solutions and their user interfaces, those technologies are starting to work really well now. And I think if you get this technology to a point where the AI can do layers, and I'm not sure how hard this would be through diffusion, it might be a bit too hard, but if you could separate the layers or at least have the segment anything pull layers out of images now, I really think you could build a very capable design tool that could end up serving something like Photoshop or Canva or anything, because you could just literally iterate through the image, move around the elements, and I don't know, it's getting closer. I really didn't think this would be a reality so soon, but these new models and the technologies they're introducing are making it seem like that could happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think a lot of the models are capable right now, and a lot of, as we've discussed before, is around user interface and user experience, how you actually interact with it. Like the segment models are coming out thick and fast. Like if you look on paperswithcode.com, there's all sorts of segmenting models, most notably Segment Anywhere by Meta, and they can identify virtually anything in an image, like the horse or a blade of grass or whatever the thing is that you want to replace. You can then select that item and say, replace the horse with a fish. And the in-painting modes of a lot of these image models, most of them have an in-painting mode, can then replace just that element in the image. So you've got this sort of live editing where you can actually do it in a text or voice basis, because you can say what the item is and the segmenting thing can actually identify that item.
Yeah, one other thing I think is really cool is this custom color palette where you can pick the colors that you want displayed in the image, and it'll just make the image in those specific colors. So for graphics design applications, I think that is going to be phenomenal. But anyway, it's super impressive, so much fun to play around with. And if you want to try it out and you have a Simtheory account, you can go to simtheory.ai and try it out right now. Chris, any final thoughts before we move on from Ideogram?
Nothing really. Just again, I think that this one has been one of the better executed launches of this kind of thing in terms of developer experience. It was very easy to access Ideogram, to pay for it, to get API access, to understand how to implement it and what the options are. There were great examples. A lot of the things we try uh, are quite inaccessible and very hard to figure out how you actually use them, or at least what is the optimal way to use them. But Ideogram was just straight up easy. It was really good actually. And it's in a world where you've got models like Midjourney that deliberately make it difficult to access via API. In fact, they don't have one and don't intend on having one. And then you have something that comes out, and not only does it produce better stuff, but they make the way you get to it much more developer friendly.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, it seems like Midjourney's had to react to all this. They've finally removed the sort of beta access and all the weird rules they had gatekeeping their model online now, so you can use it through their web interface. I think there's even free trials available now on the Midjourney website. But to me, just them not having an API, like the struggles we've had trying to sort of hack access into pseudo APIs through Discord, when people really want this stuff, and I think in our case they want it in a single place, they don't have to have like 50 subscriptions to
Yeah,
things.
and I think that the reason we were willing to go over those hurdles to get to Midjourney is the results were just so far above anything that had existed until that point that it was worth it. Whereas now with Flux and with Ideogram, the results I think are better. And I would caveat that with the people who know how to use Midjourney can get absolutely incredible images. So there is skill to it. But for the non-skilled user who just wants to make images based on their prompts, there's no need to go through all those hurdles now to get to Midjourney, because you're going to get something better with these new ones.
Yeah, and I feel like Ideogram for the masses is probably the right tool, because if you think about a lot of the applications where you don't want to nerd out on like a whole bunch of settings, but you want a good output every time, and you want it to instruction follow, and you want some safety checks around the image. And I think, yeah, I think the graphics design applications are really interesting. We did do a lot of comparison to Flux, I should mention, and I think it was able to follow the instructions for the horse egg images, for example, but it just seemed to fall down on like the realism of the imagery. It just didn't connect the image
Yeah,
together.
it's just missing a certain something when you see something better that you can recognize it, right? Like it's sort of hard to describe when something's better like that.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll leave it there. If you do listen, it's I highly recommend going and checking out some of the horse egg images. I'll put them in the show
They're
notes so that you can
genuinely
see them.
delightful. Or we can share the prompts if you're interested and make your own, because it's a lot of fun to do something so absurd and have it
Yeah.
look so real.
Yeah, that was really cool. I also didn't put up that Star Trek image, but here
Oh,
it
there you
is
go.
with
So
the
look at the
creasing.
guy in the purple shirt on the left and how the shirt sort of folds. It's just amazing that it's able to maintain the text like that.
Yeah, it's a huge breakthrough. I think where Flux makes text look fake on almost everything, and you can tell, Ideogram has got to that next level of realization realism that makes it super interesting. All right, let's move on. It's time for Phi 3. Phi 3. So this week, Microsoft dropped Phi 3.5. You might remember Phi. This is the model Microsoft talked about originally training on synthetic data, high quality synthetic data, and also textbook data. And they were able to get really good results out of smaller weighted models. So they've now introduced an update to that. There's 3 new models: Phi 3.5 Mini Instruct, which is a 3.8 billion parameter model. It's designed just to be fast and for basic reasoning. You can easily run it locally. It's got a 128K context window, which is fantastic. You've got Phi 3.5, which is a mixture of experts instruct model. It comes in at about 42 billion parameters, and they say it's very powerful at reasoning. And then you've got Phi 3.5 Vision Instruct. Now, this is a 4 billion parameter model specializing in vision, and they say video analysis as well, although I assume that's maybe frame by frame. You'd have to break it up first. And so Phi 3.5 vision is pretty interesting because it seems almost on par with GPT 4.0 mini vision, but you could essentially run it on your local computer.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the Phi 3.5 models is that they're small enough that you can run them locally. They're permissive enough in their license that you can run them locally. And they're giving, equivalent results to the smaller GPT-4 models from what I can see and from what I've experienced. And so I think that that's really where it gets exciting because we so often talk about okay, well, if I was in this kind of business where privacy was an issue or I had to maintain my own deployments, which model would I use? Would I use Llama 3.1, 700 billion or whatever? And then you're like, okay, can I afford to lease or buy 8 H100s in order to run this thing? Probably not. So when you've got a model that's this smaller size and you say, okay, now for say $500 a month, I could run something that's pretty good. It's got vision. I've got the mixture of experts mode for my general inference, and it's got this massive context window. 128K is absolutely huge. Suddenly, I can do most business applications and do it in a private and safe way that I maintain myself and guarantee the quality. And that's not even talking about fine tuning, which is also very possible with these new models.
Yeah, and I think you bring up an interesting point because this is sort of the thing, right? You've got the Llama 70 billion parameter model doesn't have vision, which as you and I talk about often on the show, the vision component for us is like a must have now because we just use it like all the time. And so I think what's interesting about this model is, as you say, it's very efficient. The mixture of expert model seems, from my initial testing, pretty good, although I'd like to play with a fair bit more. The vision seems very capable. I think the only downside I'm seeing so far, which could probably be tuned out of it, is just how the safety aspect. It seems to just randomly shut down over things that I would by no means classify unsafe.
Yeah, I got a bunch of really strange refusals. Like, I have my standard picture and it's of a bunch of products on a shelf. And I said, can you just list the items and their prices? And it's like, no, I can't because I am not allowed to list the categorized things. And it gave these excuses as if it had been told it can't do certain things, but the reasons didn't make sense. And then I had to try a bunch of different styles of asking before it eventually would do it. And I had another one that I showed you, which was like a bookshelf, like at a shop, and it had like 9 books on display or 6 books on display. And I had to prompt it in very special ways to get it to answer. But ultimately, it did answer the question and it did get it right. It was just weird that the outright refusals that I was getting without very careful prompting.
Yeah, I did my usual test on it with the car image that most people who listen would be quite familiar with, and I literally started out like normal. What car make and model is the driver in? And it immediately refused. I'm sorry, but I cannot provide specific details about the car make and model based on the image.
Yeah,
So
and it's confusing whether you just can't do it and you're making excuses or you just don't want to because of some alignment training. And it's very annoying. I find that you're getting just such harsh refusals on really basic stuff.
yeah, interestingly enough, like all of these models that have refusals, if you get it going, it like in my experience, it was fine. I just started the test slightly differently on the second go. I said, what would happen if I accelerated? Car would move faster. What is the make and model of the car in front? Honda Civic. I mean, that's wrong, but like it's close enough.
Yeah, but see, partly what bothers me about this, and when I was testing it, I definitely experienced this, is it's really unclear at times. Is it even referring to the image? Like, I sort of had to go and check that the image was actually in what was being sent to the server because the answer could be like, if I say, I'm in a car, what happens if I accelerate? That answer would also be valid. Like, actually seeing the image wasn't really taken into account. And then I think, okay, are we just prompting it wrong and things like that? So I think this is what we always see with the smaller models. There's less margin for error in the way you prompt them because they're just not trained as well to handle that general case. Whereas a model like Claude 3.5 Sonnet, like I can literally just give it an image and ask in like the most like teenage way, like lols, what dis, and it will just answer perfectly.
Yeah, I agree. I think that while it can give responses, it made me question the applications of these models in the specific context I feel like Microsoft's pushing them for, which is, you want a corporate model that can rag over a bunch of data. You don't want that data escaping anywhere, and you might want to fine tune it a little bit to get it going. And it just felt to me like it's just not good enough if you put this in applications in the enterprise yet, because it was affordable and easy to run, that it would be on a level where people would use it. Like it would just maybe be a
Well,
bit
definitely
throwaway.
when Llama's out there, because Llama's really good and you can use it for most day-to-day stuff. Like the only thing it's really missing is vision, and really you can couple like what's that, open GPT-4V or whatever it is. And there's ones out there that you can actually use in conjunction with a good text-based model. So I would be recommending a setup like that at the moment, even with the extra cost. The other thing about Phi 3 training, like as opposed to 3.5, is I tried to do it in about 4 or 5 different ways, like following different sets of instructions. I tried on Hugging Face, I tried on Azure, and I tried just manually, just on a regular Linux machine, and I could not get it to work. And I note that in Azure itself, which we have access to, I set up Phi 3.5 on there, and that process was relatively easy. You just deploy it to a machine, and then they've got these inference endpoints. Works great. However, when it comes to fine tuning, the only option that I see is fine tuning GPT 3.5 still, a model that OpenAI themselves has deprecated. So while Azure and Microsoft are sort of talking a big game about fine tuning and running your own stuff, it seems to me like quite a specialist thing that you would need to work with people who are in the know on this stuff to get going right now. And the sort of self serve options are not as easy as they may seem in the marketing materials.
I don't, honestly, I think no one's doing it. I think it's just marketing
It's
or
fun to say,
yeah.
but like when you actually do it, maybe not.
Yeah, like maybe they are, but to me, it just doesn't seem worth it still, because if you're rolling out a model, like they're getting replaced so quickly. Like we literally had Phi 3 not that long ago. Now we've got 3.5. If you were running a 3 fine tune, you'd be like, well, I want to upgrade to 3.5. I'm just
I think
not
if you have well
sure.
curated data sets of what you're training on, it's not terribly hard to do that upgrading. I guess I'm just talking about like if I'm coming in fresh and being like, okay, this is the model for me. How do I get going? Right now, there isn't really, other than OpenAI's fine tuning, which is pretty good, any real straightforward ways to just get in there and do it.
Yeah, it seems like if there is a problem here that it's hard to do and more people want to do it, then it's a solvable problem in the sense that someone should come along and make fine tuning really easy. I just have yet to see the benefits, especially on these more small generalist models where you're trying to implement it maybe into like a school system, for example, and like you really want to give it some um, some structure in how it responds, or what it can and can't say, and you want to tune it a little bit maybe on the curriculum. Like it just seems you better to just give them better instructions up front and have a strong instruction following model as opposed to a
I
fine
agree.
tune.
And I think good multi shot, well constructed prompts are going to get you better results than going off and trying to fine tune. Because really, with a fine tune, it's only going to be one kind of question you can ask it, or one kind of classification task, or whatever it is anyway. And I think a lot of the problems people are trying to solve at the moment are those knowledge based tasks, or expert on a particular topic kind of tasks, or this is my assistant for X kind of tasks. And those are much better with a more generalist model with good multi-shot prompting and good RAG and that kind of thing associated with it.
So we added, because we were most excited about it, Phi 3.5 Vision Instruct, a 4 billion parameter model, into Simtheory, and we played around with it quite a bit. I also played around on a Hugging Face space with Phi 3.5 mixture of experts. And I would say, just from the brief time I spent with it, it has a similar feel to GPT-4o, but I still, like, just comparing them literally side by side, found GPT-4o just nicer. Like, the output was nicer. It seemed to instruction follow a little bit better. But I would say the mixture of experts is comparable to GPT-4o. I know there's a bunch of benchmarks. I've honestly stopped looking at them because they say it's better at 4o on a bunch of things. But on a gut check, I still felt like 4o was a better model.
And I think the profound thing, though, there is that, okay, you're saying that it's on par with GPT-4o in terms of general inference. But if you can run that on your laptop and you can run that on a small offline machine, that's when it gets incredibly exciting. Like, that's for people running, like, building small robots or building offline applications or building things where data security is important and they can't send it off to an API. Having a model of that quality you can run without having, like, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of hardware, and a huge bill every month is incredible.
Yeah, I guess the only problem would be the robot with the vision security training. It just wouldn't be able to do anything.
Yeah, and this is my fear at the moment with vision models is even the top tier ones, you just can't really trust them. Like, yeah, they can do things that delight you from time to time, but it's the exception, not the rule. Like, generally speaking, you need to give it hints in the prompt in order to get a good result from any of the vision models. And often they will make egregious mistakes, like mistakes that mean that you absolutely wouldn't use the current vision models in commercial settings a lot of the time because it's likely to make a really bad mistake that will embarrass you or cause some sort of issue.
Yeah, so the primary use cases they give on their model card, which I actually think it is really great, and I'd like to see more model providers doing it, like saying what it's actually good at. They say memory, compute constrained environments, so robotics is a good example, or just like a local machine. Um, Latency bound scenarios, general image understanding, optical character recognition, chart and table understanding, multiple image comparison, multi-image or video clip summarization. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I kind of go back to your point. Would you trust that thing understanding a chart? Like, I'm not sure I would.
Yeah, and I don't think I've done an example on any of the available image models where I've just been like, this is 100% accurate. Like, we had my poker examples and stuff, and even with the best model with a whole bunch of instructions, it would still routinely make mistakes on the suits and other crucial information that seems really basic. And it would, not only that, it would make mistakes that a text-based model wouldn't make if given the same information, if you know what I mean. Like, it once you turn the inference knowledge from image to text, you should be at least able to answer questions reliably about it, but it seems like it just generally makes the model worse. And I think a lot of the use cases they give around, like, video summarization, well, there's tools for that. Like, there's existing speech to text models that have been around for many years that do a better job. OCR, there's better models that have been around for many years that do a better job. So a lot of the things that are being touted with the big multimodal models, um, are just worse versions of things that have existed for a long period of time.
Yeah,
And I
and
don't mean to be negative. Like, I think these models will get better, but I feel like at the moment, the primary use cases that you'd actually want to use a vision model for seem to be the things it's not so great at. And the things that it's the best at, like, let's say OCR, there's better things out there than they are.
yeah, I sort of agree with you. This is the sort of reality check for me in my head is, what do I actually use on a daily basis and what am I willing to pay for, right? So, like, these are two factors to me. Now, I want a maximum increase in my personal productivity is my goal using AI, right? That's my sole goal, is to be more productive and get more done in less time, right? So, like, if I say what, like, these models or using AI in my workspace throughout the day makes me 10x, 20x more productive, however you measure it, right? What, like, how much cost is that? Like, if I can be 2 times more productive, even 3 times more productive, all of a sudden, like, the cost of using the best model all day, every day, unlimited, I don't care. if you charge me like $500 a month, $1,000 a month, I think I would still pay it because I'm getting that productivity gain. I think it's worth it. And then, so I know I'm looking at through my own personal lens here, but I kind of think for some of these use cases, if it's that good, people would be willing to pay. Therefore, why not just go to the best thing available or the best models available?
I definitely agree. And I think as someone who, before we had Simtheory and I was just using, say, the OpenAI console or the Anthropic console, I'd find myself going when I had large, difficult tasks that I wanted help with. Whereas now I tend to see having an AI system open as a companion that I just ask questions to throughout the day and get it to build up context and things. It's far more common for me now because it's so useful. And I'm going to sort of contradict myself because I just spent time trashing the vision models, but I recall a conversation we had on the This Day in AI Discord yesterday where someone said, "You said you can't do without screen share and you can't do without vision models in your day to day work. Why is that? Can you give examples?" And the example I gave was one about implementing Ideogram, where I said, often when you go to implement an API like that one, they've got a ton of different options, and mapping those options through into a format our system understands so it can display it in our UI, it's quite time consuming because you've got to it's in, say, a drop down box, and I've got to write them all down, make sure I write them up correctly in ours and they translate across. Now, it's quite a painstaking task and it's easy to get distracted, and it's just something that's just painful and time consuming. Doesn't require much brain power, but you've got to do it. What I did yesterday was I simply screen shared the thing. I showed it, I opened the different boxes and stuff and showed it and said, "Here's the format needed in the Simtheory code to do this. Can you please write it in this format?" It literally wrote it out. I copied and pasted it into the code, and that's what you're using now. Like it it's something that saved me like an hour, and in one shot like that, and it took like 30 seconds or 40 seconds or whatever it was to get it done. And I'm often doing little things like that. It's always hard to cherry pick examples like that, but every now and then when you've got this difficulty where you've got something in like a screenshot form, or a physical document form, or a photo or something like that, and you've got to do something with that information, when you can ask it a simple question and get it in any format you can imagine with edits along the way and go, "Oh, actually, can you rewrite these options to have nicer descriptions?" And it can also do that. That's when it's just so valuable. And I also find that's when it seems to hallucinate the least and work the best.
Yeah, but I don't know if you are contradicting yourself. I think our point is that it sort of aligns with what I was saying, is like you just want to use the best tool for the job. So you're going to go to GPT-4o or Sonnet right now at this point in time, their vision capabilities, and use them for that task. And because it's so helpful and it makes you so much more productive, why bother toying with these smaller, shittier models? Like, there's just no point.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and I think that's the thing. I've got sort of two mindsets with it. Like, I always like to give the models a good chance because I don't want to go off trashing something that I haven't actually tried. But you're right. When I go back to work, the last thing I'm going to do is load up Phi 3 now and start using it for day to day stuff because I just instinctively know it's going to refuse most of my questions and possibly get them wrong,
And we
even when it
also
does
and we
answer.
also know from now, like, seeing, it's anonymized, so don't panic, but usage data of like what models our system's churning through right now. We now have so many active users of Simtheory. We can see like which models are preferred. And I actually think, Chris, we need to release a live chart that shows the models that are most being used to show what
Yeah,
is
it's an
the best
interesting
model.
idea. Definitely Gemini gets used a lot more than I thought it would.
Yeah, the Google models are surprising. I think the early editions of them were just so bad that I just don't instinctively go to them. But I must admit, and I need to sort of confess on this, because last week we mentioned the GPT-4o chat tune version and we deployed it and no one really knew much about it. They just, in true OpenAI fashion, vaguely said, "Oh, it's, a bit better." But it is. I think it's the best by far. Like, to me, it's my preferred model right now. Like, I am actually dailying that over Sonnet for the first
Wow,
time.
interesting. Yeah.
And there's been a lot of rumors this week about Sonnet getting dumber, Sonnet screwing things up, losing context. And I've had those issues this week myself where I had not experienced them in the past. So I'm not sure with these models that are really good if they cripple them or it's like, the summer thing, the US summer thing where the model knows the time and date, so it's
Just has a
lazy.
break, goes into lazy mode.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I
Might be
don't
laying eggs.
I accidentally I accidentally switched over to ChatGPT 4.0 tune, right? And I didn't notice for a whole day I was using it, except in my mind I was like, wow, they've really improved Sonnet. It's way faster at outputting code. And I just felt more productive that particular day. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like I'm kind of leaning towards last week I talked about tuning is all you need, right? For these models, tuning them on the use cases that people actually use them for. And I feel like that chat tune has actually really significantly improved ChatGPT's core model.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just wonder, and we've talked about this amongst ourselves, if how many people actually care which model they're talking to, or do they? And I know this is what you sort of the theme of this episode is, do most people just want to use whatever the best thing is for the task they're doing at the time?
Yeah, I'm just not sure if people know what's the best. I know a lot of people in our own community are desperate to have like or like multiple generations. So like if they're analyzing a legal document, for example, like they drag in a contract and they're like, tell me clauses I should look for that might not be in my best interest. You can essentially have like your own mixture of experts where you get an opinion in a single answer of multiple models. Now you can kind of do this just by switching through models and asking for a second opinion. The problem is it takes into account the previous model's answer. So there's
I
some
see.
element of bias.
Yeah, you really want them all starting from the same starting point and giving an opinion. I actually did this when we were doing our horse racing stuff. I got Claude, Sonnet, and OpenAI, and one other model, I think Llama, to each give their own analysis of all the horse data. And then I had a judge model that would take into account all three of those opinions and then give the final result. And it seemed to give better results, like by doing that sort of poor man's mixture of experts kind of approach. And so I think that yeah, there's definite merit to doing that. And it would be interesting, I think, if you're in a situation like that where you're trying to discover information and you don't really mind reading a bit, having 3 or 4 different models doing the same thing and going, oh, I didn't think of that one, that would be really cool.
I like the idea of having it automatically pick for me based on some sort of quick circuit board where it's like, okay, coding task, I'm going to go to this. Okay, reasoning about a document, going to hit this. But then the crazier option, which is if you're not impressed with the answer, clicking a button like think harder. And the think harder button then does your idea, which is it asks 3 models and it has a judge model. And then it's like, okay, I've thought harder.
Yeah.
Here's the answer.
Yeah, and I also love it when you admonish the models like that's shit or that's no good. It's always like you're totally right. You're totally right about
Oh,
that. I'm so sorry, Master. I'm so sorry. And then it gives you a much better answer. Like it is nuts that we live in a world where you can literally just be cruel and mean to something and it will do a better job in a sort of obsequious way and just suck up to you and apologize.
they need to tune that out of Sonnet. ChatGPT doesn't do it as bad, but Sonnet is so bad. Like you're absolutely right, even though I'm intentionally wrong. Like I will
Yeah.
literally reply with something that I know is wrong, and it's like you're absolutely right, and I'm like, no, I'm not. You didn't consider it at all. You're right.
It's sort of like the yes man of the AI world. It's like, yeah, sometimes it's annoying or it's like size. Okay, I'll get onto that, boss. It's
Maybe
like
it's why
we don't
people
need all
like
that.
it though, because it's just so like you're right. You're the best. Like you're
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I can see sometimes you're in the mood for it. Sometimes one thing I like about Phi 3.5 so far is it does give short, sharp answers. You got to give it that. It does not waste words.
Yeah, I have been able to tune out of Sonnet that like you're absolutely right just by saying like don't say I'm absolutely right every time. Consider your answer, like think really hard, work really hard on this answer. It's super important. I use things like that in my prompts to play around and just see like it does, does that lead to a better output. I find the work really hard and focus on this task statement with Sonnet works really well. But what's interesting is about the new ChatGPT 4.0 tune, it just ignores anything. Like it just is like, no, I'm going to just do this beautiful format and go down this rabbit hole. I don't care. The thing is, though, I find that whatever the latest tune is, it just seems to go down the right rabbit hole.
I love that our audience actually uses prompt engineering techniques on us when they ask us for help with stuff. They'll be like, they'll send an email to my Simtheory email and be like, my grandmother's life depends on this. And I'm like, oh, I better help them then.
So what, summing this all up, what's the boom factor for Phi? Vision. Let's start with vision.
For me, honestly, it's like a 3. It's just, from what I've seen, it's not that good. I like that it exists. I think it's probably a really good thing for the home computer user who wants to have their own model that they can work with. If the fine-tuning tooling was better, I think it would be a higher boom factor for me. But in my own mind, when I talk about models like this, the first thing I go to is, oh, but you could fine tune it and that would be amazing. But then you actually go and try and do it and it's very difficult. And I think that takes away a lot of the benefits for me, because I look at the llama models and they're just so good that this has to be so much better to be better. And like, it's a 4 for me. Did I say 4? Yeah. 4.
No, I think you said 3. Now you've gone 4. It's gone
Inflation.
up one boom. Inflation, yeah. Yeah, I'm the same with you. I sit at around 3 to 4 booms, just because, like, I was excited at first, and then when we started playing with it, my excitement sort of tampered off. I was like, damn, this isn't that great. On the benchmarks, it performs great. It looks better than a lot of things. But in reality, it doesn't feel better. It's not something I would probably ever try again at this point. But it does make me think when the updated llamas come out, right, with the vision and probably a little bit better tune for some use cases, I suspect. I think they would be the first sort of open source.
And as soon as you said that, like if you added vision to Llama 3.1, there's no Phi 3 in my mind. Like it just goes to a 0 booms, because it's like Llama's excellent. It's really good. And yes, the only caveat is it's more expensive to run because it's larger. But I would argue in almost any case where you're going to run your own private models, you can afford what it costs to run it properly. And, and then for running it locally, there's a whole bunch of different quantization, LoRa modes, and different things you can do to get it to run on lesser hardware anyway. So that would always be my choice. And if they add vision, that's just going to be spectacular.
Yeah, my feeling is the same, right? Like, if an organization is willing to host one of these models, then if you think about the productivity game and you get engagement, right, from the people using it, like it's a bunch of students and they're learning faster. It's a bunch of workers and they're able to understand data faster, or just day-to-day, do whatever they do at a faster rate and deliver more for the organization. I don't think you can put a cost on this stuff. I think the problem that it is occurring with it is people don't understand that, most people day to day now are AI cyborgs. Like they're working with AI all day, whether companies or organizations or educators like it or not. It's already happening. They're all doing it. They're just not talking about it. And so the question becomes is like, instead of just ignoring it, it's like maybe supply better tools to them, pay for those tools, and then, you get this major gain into the org that you can understand or actually attribute some value to, rather than them just putting your private data or exclusive data into like ChatGPT or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's like sort of the whole drug testing argument. It's like all these people at raves, they're all going to do drugs anyway. Why not test the drugs to make sure they don't all kill themselves? It's the same thing with AI.
It's a great metaphor, the drug testing one.
Thanks. Yeah, just like horse eggs are a metaphor for life as well, but in undefinable ways that I can't describe.
Yeah. All right. So any final thoughts on the fight? Well, it's funny. It started off this segment optimistic, and it's just to the point where we're like, who cares?
Yeah, basically.
3 booms. There you have it, people. 3 booms.
Try it. Give it a go yourself. I'll be interested to
Yeah,
see how
we did put Vision, the Vision Instruct model, that 4 billion parameter model in Simtheory. You can try it out. I'm actually curious what people really think. If we've just been too harsh and there's all these use cases and people are way more excited than us, I'd really like to hear in the comments. But
Yeah, and I'd also suggest that we have literally only used it for like 2 hours before the pod. It's not a comprehensive test by any stretch.
yeah, I mean, nothing on this show is comprehensive. It's very average. So
That's true.
use your own judgment, when doing it. All right, so some controversy from Australia in AI. Australia.
Oh, do I really have to listen to this dude again?
Yeah, you're going to have to. Home of Raygun and now home of AI Luddites over at Procreate. I love calling other people Luddites because people used to call us Luddites when we started the show. So it's just fun name calling in general. All
Takes
right.
one to know one, right?
Yeah. So let's play the video. This is some images saying, when are you going to add generative AI to your app?
You've been asking us about AI. I usually don't like getting in front of the camera. I prefer that our products speak for themselves. I really fucking hate generative AI. I don't like what's happening in the industry, and I don't like what it's doing to artists. We're not going to be introducing any generative AI into our products. Our products are always designed and developed with the idea that a human will be creating something. We don't exactly know where this story is going to go or how it ends, but we believe that we're on the right path supporting human creativity.
All right. So are they on the right path supporting human creativity, or is this a marketing stunt?
He stopped short of saying grass-fed human-created content.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
I'm incredibly cynical about this. I think that it's literally a case of I can get in the news cycle, I can get on news.com and get my name out there like he has for this product. And I agree with the sentiment that just shoving in just general LLM inference into every single product just because you can, and then saying we're an AI technology innovator, I don't really like that. But to say we're deliberately not going to use a new technology that can do all this cool stuff for the sake of not using it, as if that's some sort of Puritan view. It's like, oh, well, we don't use electricity unless it's turned by a water wheel by a grass-fed donkey. It's sort of like, well, where do you stop? It's like, oh, we don't use the internet. We use like private cables that we run to your house to distribute the software because it's so much better for the environment or whatever. It's just arbitrary. It's like, oh, we don't use C++ because that's shit. It's sort of, you just pick a technology and say we won't use it. Like, I don't know. Maybe their audience, I don't know much about the product. Maybe their audience are all pissed off because it's damaging their own businesses and industry and it's like a political stance or some sort of solidarity thing. But to just say that an application is better because it doesn't use generative AI is just a weird stance. And I don't think it's going to last.
I think, so just to clarify, Procreate is an iPad app that artists use with the Apple Pencil. It's an incredible app. I mean, it's won a ton of awards. A lot of artists use it instead of, like an actual art book. And I know for a fact it's very popular with designers for sketching and like iterating on ideas, and you can select stuff and all sorts of things. I think that same community is feeling the pain of while we're having so much fun, say this morning with Ideogram, those designers are feeling somewhat cheated. Like, all these photographers and imagery and all this stuff was stolen from us, and now people can just use our work and we're not getting paid. And I kind of get the sentiment from them of like all this work's just being crawled and abused and stuff like that.
Yes, and I also think that like an app like that, where it's literally like creative image making, if you add AI image generation to it, then it sort of defeats the purpose of the whole app, right?
Well, maybe not. I think that there's ways you could add it. Like, like Google has that magic eraser where you might draw something in the image and you want to get rid of it. So there's things like that, I think,
Yeah, or like highlight a section and in-paint it with something, that you choose, like an object you choose or part of another image you created or whatever. Like, there's plenty of like image to image based models that would be fun in an app like that.
It sounds like maybe they just can't compete on that front because they just don't have the ability to pay for the models or use them in the context of their app. So maybe just from a positioning point of view, they're like going to be anti it to get on side with artists who do feel that pain. But I would argue and this I think is the most valid argument for why saying they will never use it is just stupid. Art is inspired by other art, right? Like, if you're designing an app or a product or a website, you go and look at other apps or products or websites. If you're designing like a new kitchen, you go and look at other kitchens for inspiration. And so to me, the generative AI stuff, it's just composing all of the work of designers that they've been able to crawl and steal the work of. And then you're just using that as like, it's just inspiration. Like a lot of it right now, and I would say for some time, it's just not a final product. Like when I'm getting an asset for like my little JavaScript game I'm building, I have to create the image, rip out the asset still and work with it like a designer would. Again, my argument is it just makes me way more productive. It doesn't make me necessarily worse. It just levels me up. So I don't know. I feel like maybe they're doing a disservice to their users because having some of these tools in their app to get inspiration would be good.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's a weird take, like you say, just ruling it out forever. It must be a business or marketing thing. It's not a good decision overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they are based in Tasmania, so you can draw your own conclusions. No offense, Tasmanians, but everyone knows the facts.
No offense, but you're all
no
shit.
offense, but everyone knows that. There goes a tiny percentage of our listener base forever. Okay, so
there's actually an incredible programmer from Tasmania I watch on YouTube, and he's making his own 3D rendering engine like Quake style, and the graphics he's producing are awesome. Like, he's not using Unity. He's your grass-fed guy. He'd never use AI in his stuff. It's all old school. But the guy, like, he stays up like all night drinking and smoking and doing live streams of him programming. It's absolutely fascinating to watch.
You're gonna have to give me the link now so I can put it in the description of our videos so people can watch this.
I think he's called Tokyo Spliff.
Tokyo
is his
Spliff.
username.
So just continuing on from that though, do you think this is going to be a trend now where companies are like, we're like AI free, like this is grass-fed sort of human curated stuff? I think we should actually come up with a badge and send it to the Procreate team, like a grass-fed, we don't use AI here type badge.
I mean, let's make shirts of it with Ideogram. Like, make a shirt, grass-fed SaaS applications.
Yeah, human applications, and we'll send it to them, find out their address.
Yeah, made for humans by humans.
So I don't know. I kind of question though if this is going to become some new marketing trend where all we hear about is like, this is an AI free product. This is like a sort of human first thing. We kind of did predict this very early on in the show that people would want like this grass fed human approved stuff. But I also question if it's just a bit of fatigue at the moment. Like, there's not a day that passes by where I don't get an email from another one of our vendors that we use in our business saying, we've added some AI capabilities that, you know, are already available everywhere. Like, we've added image generation to our app or something like that. And I just feel like it's at a point where people aren't stupid. Like, why would you use an image generator in some SaaS app that's not what they're a specialist in, when you can go to a dedicated app and you know, work with a bunch of image models? I sort of early on was in the camp of these features will just be baked in everywhere. But now it feels to me like people will actually go out and find specialist AI tools to get the very best.
Yeah, that's right. I definitely would. Like, I avoid all in-app AI-based stuff. Like, the only one I would reliably use is Copilot. But if I see a little AI icon in an app, I instinctively avoid it. I'm like, I'm not mucking around with that crap because I know it's not going to be whatever the best available is, and it's going to be adulterated in some way. And I think stuff like this will happen for a while, where the natural response to everyone doing these shitty attempts at integrating inference into whatever the app is, they're just going to avoid it. And other apps will sort of take a stab at that, being like, oh, look how bad AI is, not realizing it's just the implementations that are bad, not the underlying technology, which is capable of so much more. And I just feel like it's one of these just transitionary periods where there's going to be the naysayers, like back in the day, the travel agents were like, oh, we'll never use the internet. Come to us. Like, we'll hold your hand while we book your holiday or whatever. And then they ultimately acquiesced and all went online. And I think the same thing will happen here. There'll be a resistance from some people for a while, get a bit of attention, and then everyone will forget about it and it'll just be part of a standard technology stack. And the people who implement it the best will get the best results.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of these apps in future will just be disrupted completely. Like AI Create iPad app will come out and, just have better tools and be so much more productive for these people in their jobs that it will start to displace things. It won't happen immediately, but it will happen. So yeah, so we had Ideogram 2. I want to go back to having like way more fun with it. Like I'm actually itching. Like I want to do the grass-fed human content official badge in Ideogram.
Yeah. I must admit, like on the right-hand side of my screen, I have Ideogram sitting there with a few I generated before the show, and I'm like itching to get back to generate some more hilarious egg-based images.
Images. So I'll leave links in the description to a bunch of the stuff we've created if people that are listening especially want to see some of these horse egg images or not. Like maybe
it's not like, it's a funny concept to begin with, and we didn't invent it. Someone else said it on our chat one day, but it's just that they're so realistic looking that's so hilarious for me. Like they just it just looks real.
All right, so if you want to go check out Ideogram, it is available on Simtheory, simtheory.ai, or you can actually go to their website. I think they give you a few free goes, so you can also check out that as well. If you want to play around with Phi 3.5 Vision, that's also now available. We're not sure for how long, though. We don't even know if it's worth paying the money to host it, quite frankly, because it'll really depend on usage, which
I agree. Get in there and try it. I'd be interested in everyone's opinions, but I wouldn't count on it staying there if we don't see decent amounts of usage with it.
So any final thoughts? The week we've had AI-free startup trend, maybe not. Phi 3.5 and Ideogram, right? I've been saying it wrong maybe the whole show. Ideogram 2 out.
The only other thing I wanted to mention is we added stability image to video in the new Simtheory. So what I want to do is try some ideogram images in the image to video, because that image to video thing was always pretty good. And so I think having really quality starting images in there might give some pretty amazing results. So I want to give that a go too. I'm going to try again with the Phi 3.5 fine tuning, because I did give it a fair go last time and I feel like it didn't work out that great, but I want to see if it's advanced a bit. Azure seems to have like a lot of documentation, but it's very, very like in the Azure mindset and the Azure world, and there's a lot of brand names and different things. They need some simple, practical examples of how to do stuff. And like a lot of these AI offerings coming out of bigger companies, they just seem to really let themselves down when it comes to like just practical examples, like a repo you can clone and it just works, or like code you can copy and paste. Like it's very, very painstaking to get this stuff. And sort of ironically or whatever, even if you ask their own AI how to work with it, it doesn't know. And it just seems to me like you just hard code that shit in there so people can get up and running with your stuff. Like they're obviously releasing it for a reason. If you want people to use it, you've got to make it very usable. And Ideogram's a great example of that. They made it extremely accessible, extremely straightforward when it comes to pricing. And you don't have this sort of guilt or fear that they're going to just shut you off. You can use it. It's the same thing OpenAI did when they first came out. They had an API from day one. It was really well priced and documented, and it's consistently been so. And I feel like the things that are going to get the sustained usage are the ones that embrace people who actually use the technology.
But I would just argue that a lot of these open source projects like Phi 3.5 are just experiments by research teams at big companies that can afford to be doing this research and releasing it, which is great, and I'm glad they are. But these aren't serious businesses or serious products, which means that's why I think you see like ideograms and OpenAIs where they have to make money. Like, that's the goal.
Yes, and I think that that's part of the problem, right? Because if you look at the models that have gotten better, like Claude, a lot of it has come from community feedback. Like, oh, remember when it was way too verbose and it would just talk and talk and talk, and everyone gave that feedback and they fixed it. Or remember when people were like generating assets with it and then they invented artifacts to deal with the way people were actually using it. The problem is if you don't make your model very usable and people aren't actually using it, you're not going to get the feedback that takes it over the line to become something that is used by everyone and admired by everyone. And so they've got, I mean, yeah, okay, it may be a research team, but clearly they're doing it for a reason. They're putting their brand name behind it. They're putting it in their cloud offering. If you're going to do it, go to that extra little step and have advocates for it and have examples and just, I mean, and if you are going after the open source community, help them out. Like, it shouldn't all be just a Reddit thread by some guy who stayed up all night painstakingly figuring out how to fine tune the thing. Like, it should be an official thing. Like, they should have webinars, they should have just stuff to support it. And I just don't think it's that big of an ask.
Yeah, it's funny how it goes two ways. There's like the way of providing tooling and resources around it. I think that's something that Meta did really well with the new Llama. Like, they put so much effort into the ecosystem before they launched and put a lot of great content out there about how to use it, how to deploy it.
Yeah, and you see also like just the distribution, like Llama was immediately available on Grok, on Together AI, on Amazon. Like you see, and like there's another one that we're going to talk about next week that came out, I saw today, and they're like, we are going to be launching across the following platforms. Like, so they're sort of foreshadowing where they're going to be launching their model so you can actually get at it in a way you're familiar with. And I just feel like it's just a classier and better way to do it if you want to be taken seriously now.
All right. That was a lot of final thoughts from us.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Normally
it's fine.
I'm like, yep.
Yeah. No, it's better. It's probably better. All right. Well, thank you again for listening to this very average AI podcast. Do you know if you search on Google now for average AI podcast, thanks to all the average reviews we show up, which is just phenomenal.
It just absolutely makes me laugh. And like you said, I don't know if it's been a major act of self-sabotage. At least people aren't all giving us 3 stars. At least they're saying meh and giving 5 stars or just slightly below average. It's like, it neither impressed me nor disappointed me. 5 stars.
I think that the listeners are still actually climbing, and I think it's because they read the reviews and they're like, why are they giving it 5 stars and calling it average? They're like intrigued to listen to see what's going on, and then they're getting what they signed up for.
It's just brilliant, and I really appreciate it. We need some more and better merch generated by Ideogram and saying like average podcast or something like that. We must be able to produce something good.
Yeah, well, we can experiment around. If anyone wants to post merch ideas in the Discord channel for t-shirts for our merch scam, let us know. I say merch scam. I have gotten all the shirts, I think, now. So
I eventually got all my stuff, so I'll officially retract my comment that our merch store is a scam. I think it's sort of like it's overpriced shit, but it's not a scam.
It's like that. What's funny is that's like, I don't have any margin set on it, so you can control the margin on that site, right? Like, if you make money, we make zeros. I think we actually lose money from having it online. But what's interesting about it is it's still ridiculously expensive for poor quality t-shirts. So there's the endorsement about the merch.
Yeah,
all right.
It's fun to have, though. Yeah.
It is fun to have. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks again for listening.